Hi everyone, welcome back to USCIS Analysis. This is the update for August 21st, 2022 regarding the processing times for I-129F Petition for Alien Fiancé by USCIS. Unfortunately, the data that I've collected shows that I-129F processing is taking longer and longer. If the only communication that you've received from USCIS so far is that USCIS has received your application, sometimes referred to as NOA-1, then you can expect that you will likely have to wait longer than the 13.5 months that is currently shown on the USCIS website. In this video, I'll show you the data and analysis to back up this claim and give some specific projections for the wait times based on the date that your I-129F application was received by USCIS. For those who are new to this channel, please let me first give you a disclaimer. I am not affiliated with USCIS, and I am not an immigration lawyer. I'm just a guy with some data mining skills trying to better understand how long I'm going to have to wait until my fiancé and I can move to the US to get married. It's been almost a year since I received notification from USCIS stating that they received my I-129F application, but I haven't heard anything since. Frustrated by the long wait and lack of information, I decided to use my data mining skills to see if I could get a better understanding of the situation. This data mining takes a lot of effort, so I want to share it with as many people as possible. Armed with this information, I'm hoping to inspire as many people as possible to contact their relevant senators and congressmen to try to put pressure on USCIS to improve this situation. Now, let me explain where this data is coming from. After you submit your I-129F application, you'll get a letter from USCIS to inform you that USCIS has received your application. This letter contains a receipt number that you can use to track the status of your case. The first 3 characters of this number will be WAC, followed by 2 digits corresponding to the fiscal year that the application was received. Actually, the status of cases is publicly available, and anyone with the case number can check the status of that case. Note that the case status that USCIS discloses does not contain any personally identifiable information. I've gone through the effort of collecting the statuses of all applications that were received from October 2020 to the present, and I update this data every weekend. Here are the statuses of all of the I-129F applications that have been received by USCIS since October of 2020. These bars are grouped by case number with the oldest cases to the left and the newest cases to the right. The group on the left is all of the I-129F cases for fiscal year 2021, and the group on the right are all of the cases received so far for fiscal year 2022. Note that the fiscal year for the U.S. government is October through September. In total, there are 78,000 applications represented on this chart. Blue is the number of cases that have been received but haven't been processed yet. Orange is the number of cases that were rejected at the time of application due to some error with the application. Yellow is the number of applications that have begun to be processed but require the applicant to submit additional information. Green is the number of applications approved, and red is the number of applications denied. There are currently 50,000 applications that are still waiting for a resolution. This chart shows the same information as the previous chart, but cases are grouped by the week that they were received by USCIS. I haven't been able to determine the date of reception for all cases, but I have been able to collect the vast majority. In particular, my data is not very complete for cases that were received before May 16th of 2021. This is because a lot of those cases had already started to be processed before I started mining my data. Anyways, this data shows the statuses of all of the cases for which I know the application date. The important takeaway is that from this chart, it is clear that USCIS is currently processing cases that were received before July of 2021. Cases that were received from July of 2021 or later are basically not being processed yet. In other words, USCIS is currently processing cases from around 14 months ago. Another important takeaway from this chart is that USCIS is currently receiving around 800 cases per week. In other words, in order to keep the backlog from increasing, USCIS needs to be processing more than 800 cases per week. Unfortunately, USCIS is currently not even close to achieving that. This chart shows the number of cases that have been closed each week for the past year. The slightly good news is that USCIS seems to be speeding up processing a little. For the past few weeks, USCIS has been able to close around 400 cases per week. However, this is still far below the pace of incoming cases, which is around 800 new cases per week. This means that unless USCIS improves quickly, processing times are going to continue to increase rapidly. This chart shows the cases for which the status has changed in the previous 4 weeks, specifically the 4 weeks between July 24th and August 21st, 2022. From this chart, we can see that over the past 4 weeks, USCIS has been focusing on processing the applications that were received between May and June of 2021. USCIS has only just started to process cases from the end of June of 2021. Here is an animation of the updates over the past 6 weeks. This gives a sense of how USCIS is moving through the backlog. As you can see, during any 1 week, USCIS is working on cases that were received over a period of several weeks. This is because some cases need additional information to be processed, and USCIS comes back to those cases as that information is received from the applicant. If you look carefully at this animation, you can see that the peak of application processing moves from cases received around the end of May 2021 to those received around the middle of June 2021. In other words, over the course of the last 6 weeks, USCIS has only moved forward by around 3 to 4 weeks in its backlog. So here are the key takeaways for this data mining and analysis. First, the backlog of I-129F applications is currently 50,000 cases. USCIS is currently receiving around 800 new cases per week, but is only closing around 400 cases per week. This means that unless USCIS improves quickly, processing times are going to increase rapidly. Second, USCIS is currently processing cases that were received before July of 2021. If your application was received after July 2021, then your wait time is likely to be longer. I'll show some projections for expected wait times in a moment. If your case was received before July 2021, but you haven't heard anything from USCIS yet, here is some more detail for you. This chart shows the status of cases that were received before July of 2021 by each date that they were received. Many of the cases that were received towards the end of June of 2021 are still waiting to be processed, but I expect that you will hear something within the next few weeks in the worst case. Here are some projections for the I-129F cases that were received after June of 2021. This is assuming that USCIS continues to close cases at around 400 cases per week, which is the average rate over the past 4 weeks. I didn't even bother to make projections for applications that were submitted in 2022 because those projections are more than a year from now. Hopefully USCIS will have substantially sped up their processing by then. You may be wondering why my projections are so much longer than the 13.5 months that's currently shown on the USCIS website. Unfortunately, this number is super misleading. It means that USCIS has completed 80% of the cases that were received 13.5 months ago or earlier. It does not mean that the cases received now will be processed in 13.5 months. You're probably already aware that this processing time number has been steadily increasing over the past year, and it will continue to increase as long as the pace of closing cases is slower than the pace of incoming cases. Again, USCIS is currently processing around 400 cases per week versus receiving 800 cases per week. In other words, the backlog is increasing rapidly, so the processing time will continue to increase accordingly until USCIS speeds up processing. USCIS has set a goal for themselves to reduce processing times for I-129F applications to 6 months by October of 2023. At the moment, they are still clearly heading in the wrong direction, so I'd like to ask you all for your help. Please take a moment to write to your or your sponsor's senator and congressman to help us put more pressure on USCIS to improve this worsening situation. Links to finding the contact information for your senator and congressman are in the top comment below. Although it's not very positive, I really hope that you found this information helpful so that you can better plan your future with your soon-to-be spouse. If so, please help me spread this information to others by giving a like to this video. Also, I'll definitely continue to track this situation, so please consider subscribing to keep up with the latest. My next update video will be in 4 weeks, but until then, I'm happy to answer questions in the comments. Thanks!